I've mentioned many times on this channel that Saint John Bosco had superhuman strength, but today I intend to prove it through recounting eyewitness testimonies. I'm going to show you that his strength wasn't merely natural, but a gift from God, like Samson in the Old Testament. The Miracles and Prophecies of Saint John Bosco, a project of America Needs Fatima. I'm your host, Matthew Miller. Subscribe for new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. In Saint John Bosco's first prophetic dream, when he was a child, he was told, "Make yourself humble, steadfast, and strong." This was to be a blessing for both body and soul. Indeed, it is written, "Better a poor man strong and robust than a rich man with wasted frame. More precious than gold is health and well-being, contentment of spirit than coral." The Book of Sirach. Seemingly, therefore, the voice not only gave him advice, but also conferred a special gift on him. And I would like to add that his strength assisted him in warding off assassination attempts later on in his life, as we've already seen in past episodes that you can watch by clicking on the card above me. With a mere glance at John's physical appearance, one could see in it a God-given strength. He had a lithe build, was of average height with narrow shoulders. This strength he developed by continual exercise. He worked tirelessly at performing acrobatic stunts and completing his farm chores. He tested himself by cracking peach and apricot pits between his teeth. He could crush walnuts, hazelnuts, and almonds between the thumb and index finger of either hand. Without much effort, he could snap metal rods that were used as balcony railings into small pieces. When lining up his friends for gymnastic drills, smilingly he would send anyone who fell out of line reeling to the rear by the strong grip of his arm. Some events that occurred much later in John's life require mention at this point. At Chieti, for instance, he used his strength to dissuade anyone who tried to force him into games he didn't care for. On his way to class one day, during his last year of high school, 4 of his companions suddenly ambushed him by jumping on his back. John let them have their fun, and as soon as all 4 were upon him, he grabbed the hands of the topmost boy and squeezed down so tightly that the other 3 boys were helplessly pinned against him. Straightening up, John then carried the yelling boys into the playground for everyone to enjoy the spectacle. Then he carried them back into class with the utmost ease. The boys never again dared to bother him. At that age, John could easily carry 400 pounds of weight in his arms. One day, during his first years as a priest in Turin, he was walking on the porticos of the outdoor market and noticed a crowd in front of the entrance to a draper's shop. Egged on with curiosity, he elbowed his way through the crowd and witnessed 2 huge growling and snarling mastiffs engaged in a vicious fight. But before we hear what happened with these bloodthirsty dogs, I'd just like to invite you to enroll in our Saturday Mass intentions for the promoters of Saint John Bosco by clicking on the link in the description below, or you can wait till the end of the video and click on the logo that should appear on the screen. Because of the dogfight, the onlookers were afraid to enter the shop. Don Bosco pushed his way to the front of the crowd. At that moment, one of the dogs backed into the doorway and crouched, ready to spring. "Shut the door, quickly, so we can't get out. I'll take care of this one," Don Bosco ordered a young sales clerk. "Watch out, it'll bite," warned the boy. "Don't worry," replied Don Bosco. "Just do as I say." Griffin will be our stand-in for the snarling dog. Don Bosco firmly seized the dog by the rump and the nape of its neck. He then swung it around for a few minutes. Barking furiously, the dog struggled to escape. Shocked by such daring, the spectators feared that the dog would get loose and attack them. But Don Bosco, holding it firmly by the nape of the neck, lowered it to the ground and dragged it to the center of Milano Square toward the bridge. There he freed the dog and gave it a resounding wallop on its rump. With a loud yelp, limping and panting, the dog dashed away from the crowd. Canon Joseph Zapata, who had witnessed the scene, went up to Don Bosco and said, "Don't you consider this rather unbecoming for a priest?" "Dear Canon," replied Don Bosco respectfully, "someone had to do it. No one else made a move, so I did." Another incident occurred in 1846, or maybe 1847, when Don Bosco was going to Biella to preach a retreat. During such trips, he laid artful plans to win over coachmen and stable boys into his confidence. Once this was done, he instructed them in their religion and encouraged them to approach the sacrament of penance. To gain their confidence, he would display some of his physical prowess, something that never failed to impress them. One day, he was in Sentia, a small town near Turin. While waiting for the stagecoach to be readied, he rested against the wall of the inn, very close to the horses while they were being changed. The coachman warned him several times to move away, for one of the horses would bite anybody who approached. Don Bosco replied, "Don't worry, it won't hurt me." Suddenly the horse moved toward Don Bosco and cornered him against the wall. It lunged at him, but never had a chance to open its mouth. Using only one hand, Don Bosco gripped its jaws so firmly that the horse couldn't shake itself free, no matter how wildly it tossed its head. It reared furiously and kicked frantically, but Don Bosco held him in a vice-like grip. People crowded around to watch in mingled fear and wonder. Meanwhile, Don Bosco quietly ordered the coachman and a stable boy to fetch a rope and tie the horse's rear legs. Once the legs were securely bound and Don Bosco had room for movement, he slowly loosened his grip. As he climbed into the coach, everybody asked, "Who is this priest that has such a powerful grip?" A year or so later, Don Bosco was a guest of a local high school instructor, Father Matthew Pico. Several porters arrived, delivering a piano tightly crated with metal strips. Father Pico, very anxious to examine the piano immediately, was unable to find a hammer or pliers or any tool to open the crate. Don Bosco examined the metal bands and then closed his grip around them. The metal straps gave way and were forced open. The metal strips were all broken free in this manner. Next, he wrenched open the nailed boards of the crate. Father Pico stared in speechless amazement as metal snapped and wood splintered. Once, while in Paris in 1883, Don Bosco was invited to dinner by a family of the nobility. Toward the end of the meal, hard nuts were served, and the guests waited for the nutcrackers. During the conversation, Don Bosco picked up selected nuts, cracked them between his 2 fingers, and offered them to the dinner guests. They were delighted at being served by a man whom they held in such great esteem. Thinking that Don Bosco had been shelling the after-dinner nuts with a nutcracker, they were amazed when they noticed that he was shattering the shells with his fingers. Some remarked with admiration, "It must take a special gift from Merry Help of Christians to crush nuts like that." And I think it probably was. In 1884, overworked and exhausted, Don Bosco had been confined to bed. His doctor decided to test his strength with an ergometer. Before doing so, he said, "Don Bosco, grasp my wrist with all your might." "Doctor," replied Don Bosco, "you might be sorry." The doctor insisted, "Don't be afraid of hurting me. Grasp it as hard as you can." Don Bosco consented and gripped the doctor's outstretched hand so strongly that he drew tears from him. The doctor, who had not suspected such strength in his patient, bore it for a moment, but then uttered a sharp cry of pain. Don Bosco's grip had almost forced blood from the doctor's fingertips. Then he told Don Bosco to grip the instrument. "Listen, doctor," warned Don Bosco, "if I grip this thing, I'll break it." "No matter how strong you are," replied the doctor, "you won't be able to break this steel ring." "Very well. Then you try your strength on it first," said Don Bosco. The doctor firmly grasped the instrument, and it registered at 48. "Now let this good father who has been nursing me try it too," said Don Bosco. The priest he was referring to was none other than Father Lemoyne, the author of these biographical memoirs. Father Lemoyne complied, and the needle rose to 43. "Now it's your turn," the doctor said to Don Bosco. He gripped the ergometer, and the needle rose to its maximum mark of 60. Don Bosco felt that it wasn't registering his full strength. In utter amazement, the doctor declared that he had never before met a patient who, after a long illness, displayed such remarkable vigor. The wonder of Don Bosco's strength was that he was able to demonstrate it without any seeming effort. In his usual calm and relaxed manner, there wasn't any fuss. It seemed to be the most natural thing in the world. We shall see in future episodes on this channel how his strength gradually was used up in continuous sacrifice for the glory of God and for the good of his fellow men. Thank you all so much for watching, and don't forget, if you'd like to enroll in our Saturday Mass intentions for the promoters of Saint John Bosco, just click on the link above me here. God bless you, and Our Lady keep you.